right, what is up, YouTube? It's your boy, Coach Tiny Palms, and today we're going to be talking about a very popular topic, which is how to improve running while also building muscle. I'm going to talk about how I have helped many people do this. I have done this myself, actually. For those of you who didn't know, I have gone into a lot of running before. And then I'm going to talk about some of the pitfalls and what people do wrong when trying to accomplish this task. All right. So the first thing that's important to understand is depending upon what type of race you perform does change how you would have to create the program. So most people who come to me with this issue is that they're trying to perform races like a marathon or half marathon, for some even potentially an ultras, which are rather longer distance races. Okay. And with that being said, you have to understand that when you are trying to get better at those races, there is a lot of volume that you need to be able to complete throughout the week and month and cycle to get better at running. And with that, there's going to come a lot of stress, and stress is not a bad thing. We need to create stress in order to create adaptations. But you have to understand when you're creating that much stress for something like running, you're only going to be able to create so much stress for weightlifting to be able to build muscle. And where people go wrong when they're trying to perform this task of getting better at both is that they'll take a marathon training program and follow that. And then they'll take their favorite influencer's bodybuilding program, we'll call it, and run that at the same time. And what ends up happening is that they create significantly too much stress to be able to recover from, and ultimately don't end up getting better at anything. Sometimes they get better at one thing and not the other, and that typically ends up being the running and not the weightlifting. But at the end of the day, they don't accomplish what they set out to. So the first thing that you guys need to understand is, once again, what type of race you are performing dictates the amount of stress that's going to come along with it, and then how much stress you can then give to weight training. All right. Now, the second thing that you need to understand is what type of weight training you should be performing alongside a running program. All right. In my opinion, contrary to what I think many people would do or believe, is you should be performing lower repetitions and less sets per training session. And when I say lower repetitions, I'm talking somewhere in like the 6 to maximum 12 repetitions per session. Now, if you're, per exercise. Now, if you're doing upper body, you can go higher, because obviously your upper body isn't going to really create too much fatigue for your lower half. However, there's some more nuance to that. But when we're really talking about lower body, we want to do less repetitions, heavier weights. And the reason for that is the literature shows that by performing sets of lower reps and heavier weights, it's going to create less fatigue, not only on your nervous system, but also on the localized muscle tissue. And therefore, by performing sets and reps in the lower rep scheme and heavier loads, you're not going to create as much fatigue for when you go and need to run. So for those of you who want to try this and experiment this, perform 5 sets of leg press with 20 reps each time and go to failure. Then the next day, try to go do a running interval workout. All right. Then the next week, do sets of 5 by 5 on the back squat, and then go run the following day with the intervals, and tell me which one allows you to perform better. I would bet 9 out of 10 times it's going to be after the 5 by 5 back squat. All right. And you'll know why when you try it, but you got to try it to fully understand it. Okay. So that's the first thing. Now, the next thing when it comes to the weight training while you're trying to run at the same time is, I would say most people are doing a traditional like bro split or a push-pull legs. And I don't like that split. And the reason I don't like that split is, once again, we don't need or want to have full-blown leg days. Why? Because they're going to create too much fatigue. And when I'm really thinking about fatigue, I'm thinking about soreness. A soreness is a signal of fatigue, right? You hurt the muscle in a sense. And trying to run with extremely sore legs is obviously not going to allow you to perform as well during those sessions. So instead of doing something where we have a leg day, I like to run, for the most part, full body sessions. Okay, so you'll take a chest exercise, a back, an arm, a bicep, a tricep, a quad, a hamstring. All right. And we're going to run full body sessions, and we're going to do about 2 to 3 sets per muscle group per workout. And that's going to allow us to get really good intent for those exercises, and then not create so much damage and fatigue to the muscle, so that we can still go and perform whatever running task we need to that day or the following day. Okay. So in terms of full body split, I like to go every other. Now, The next thing we'll then stem into is how many weight training sessions can you really get away with? And I already talked about this, but it does depend on your running distance that you are training for. But let's just talk marathon because that's the average person who comes to me. If you're training for a marathon, you're running bare minimum 3 days a week. Most people are probably in the 4 to 5 days a week. So with that being said, you're only going to have so many sessions available for weight training. And my recommendation would be somewhere around 3 days of weight training. Okay. And so you would run full body every other day, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Okay. And then you could probably double up a couple of those days with some running sessions. And how I would go about that, this is important to understand. Okay. So you're going to have your key runs, right? The ones that are harder, faster pace, specific to your weaknesses, depending upon what type of energy system you suffer with, whether that's anaerobic threshold, aerobic, whatever it might be. Okay. You don't want to have an extremely damaging workout the day before that one. So let's just say your most important run of the week is Thursday. Wednesday isn't going to have anything there that is going to create too much fatigue in the leg. So let's just say I'm programming a Romanian deadlift for you, or a leg press or a split squat, something that can be super fatiguing. I'm going to put that movement farther away from your key run workout so that you can still perform. Now, on the runs that are kind of just accumulating volume and just getting time on your feet and are done at a pretty easy effort, I'm not going to be so concerned with the exercises that I'm having you do the day before. So for a lot of people, that might be like on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. That day before can be kind of tough on the legs, so we don't have to worry about it. It could even be done on the same day. Some people actually like to program the hard training session on the same day as their hard run session because that fatigue hasn't really occurred yet. So you could still get away with it. I don't really love that idea, but if someone has to do multiple double sessions per week, I do think that's a good idea. Now, the next question might be, should you run first or should you weight train first? And that's going to be very specific to your goal. Now, what I'll say is if the running is your goal to get better at and you want building muscle as like a side quest, then you should always start with the run that day. And that's mainly going to be because whatever you prioritize is going to be where you get the most effectiveness. So if you run after your weight training session, you're going to be somewhat fatigued no matter what. And therefore, that session isn't going to be as great. Now, if you run before that, your weight training won't be as great, but that's okay because your goal is getting better at running. Now, if you're someone who really wants to prioritize building muscle and just kind of wants to complete the task of running the marathon, then I would weight train before. Okay. And if you're someone who's going to do that double session, like I'm talking about, you would do the double sessions on the days where the running is just more time on your feet. Okay. That, 40 minutes, 50 minutes of just accumulating volume, easy effort, things of that nature. I personally wouldn't double up on the days that are key runs like intervals or your super long run days. All right. So if I was to set this up perfectly for someone, it'd be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, where you're weight training and you have full body. Okay, so Saturday is then going to be your long run day, where obviously that could be easy and then become intense at certain times depending upon where you are in season. And then Sunday is going to be a rest day. Thursday, the day before your Friday workout, is going to be your key run. All right, that's going to be your hardest run session of the week. It'll give you a day before your 2 days rest before your long run. So you have Friday and then whenever you start on Saturday, you'll have a good 48 hours. Friday PM, I wouldn't have any running in there. Wednesday, I would have my weight training session. Tuesday, I would have an easy run day. And then Monday, I would also have a double session of weightlifting plus running. And that run session would be challenging. It would be some type of interval based. Okay. I can't really say specific to what because it depends upon the human, but that's how I would kind of set it up. So you'll notice the only rest day in there is going to be Sunday, but the way we formulate it and plan it, it allows for progression still. It's just all about intensity and volume and ensuring that's correctly. So this is how you would get better at both running and building muscle at the same time in terms of a concurrent training program. Now, there is an additional way of going about this. And how you do that is you have phases throughout the year where at one point you're focusing on building muscle and not so much on running. And then that switches. So all your effort is going into weight training and your running is low. And as we get closer to race season, it flip flops. And this is actually the best way to go about it. But a lot of people don't like that. They want to see results on both ends at the same time. But the best way to go about this is simply having a period of time for, let's say, 2 to 3 months where you really focus on building muscle and you're not so concerned with your running. So the volume is lower. You allow that to recover, get mentally prepared. And as weeks and months go on, it starts to shift downward. So now the running's coming up and the lifting is going down. And now you hang out here for a couple months and then it's here. And then by the time you get closer to race, weight training is significantly lower and running is all you're really focused on. And throughout a year, what can happen is not only do you improve your marathon training, but you also build some muscle. Maybe you put on 5-6 pounds of muscle and you take 10 to 15 minutes off your marathon. That's a great year. You do that for 3, 4, 5 years in a row. We're talking about getting 50 minutes off your marathon, lofty goal, and putting on 25 pounds of muscle, lofty goal. But you get the idea is that we can make really good improvements in more of a less concurrent training, more of a periodized approach, which is what I would prefer. But once again, people like to do both at the same time because that's what they see their favorite influencer does. Okay. So obviously didn't give you guys a lot of data here, things of that nature, but I just wanted to give you guys an explanation on how I would do things, what I see people do wrong. And hopefully this gave you a better understanding of why and what you should do. If you're someone who wants to accomplish this task, don't want to think about how to do it or set it up and just need someone to do that for you, I'm your guy. You could hit me up on TommyPomaticoFitness@gmail.com or on Instagram, Tommy_Pomatico. Send me a DM there. Hope it was helpful, guys. Until next time, catch you later.